Hey everybody, Super Vader 400 here, Douglas Blair Roberts. To people who are on Facebook, it's time for my long overdue review of the entire DC Extended Universe. This will be a short overview of all 5 films. The first part of this video, which will include a review of the 2013 film Man of Steel, the first official film in the DCEU, will be webcam. The second part will be narration. Something I forgot to mention in my Marvel Cinematic Universe, these short overview reviews of both of these universes, both of these videos are short overviews of movies I'm gonna do longer, more in-depth reviews of. Some of these on my YouTube channels I've already done long reviews over, but I'm going to be doing even longer and better reviews to reflect my opinions on the films now to reflect my opinions on, because while I still like all these films, my opinions on some of these films have changed just a little bit. That's one thing I forgot to mention in my Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's something I'm going to be doing. When I upload this, I'll be sure to mention it in the description box below. But yeah, this is my review of the DCEU films. I initially want to do a review of this film as a lead up to Justice League, but I was lazy, kept putting it off, kept trying to do other things, and it never got done. So once again, Justice League will be included in this video, in this little video, and I will give my thoughts on the future of the DCEU. Before I start, again, the first part, which will include the review of Man of Steel, will be webcam, and the second parts, which is BVS, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, and Justice League, will be the other parts. And before I start, I like all films in the DCU, which if I had to choose, BVS, Wonder Woman, and Suicide Squad would probably have to be the best of all of these movies. And films like Man of Steel and Justice League are awesome too. Justice League is better now on DVD and Blu-ray than it was when it was in theaters. But that's my opinion on the DCEU. You have fanboys who are divided. They like either Marvel or DC. I like both. Both bring different things to the table and offer something different. You have a longer, more developed, cohesive universe with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and their movies have the perfect balances of action, adventure, drama, and comedy, which is why they're so well received. Then you have the quote-unquote DCEU, which I like for being much more serious, much more darker, and for something DCEU doesn't get credit for, and that's being more comic book like being a comic book come to life. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, to make the human characters more useful, in these titanic battles, they underpower and downscale several powerful heroes like Thor, Drax, Loki, Thanos, and many more, in order to make the human characters like Hawkeye, Falcon, and Black Widow, characters like them who otherwise would not need to be there at some of these battles, to make them sort of more useful and give them more to do. Whereas DC, they portray these characters as powerful as they are in the comics, and the DCU is pretty much a comic book come to life. No matter how silly, stupid, or idiotic it is, they will take something out of the comic book and insert it into the film. Case in point will be the supervillain Enchantress from Suicide Squad. When adapting Enchantress for real life, they would either A, got rid of her altogether, or severely altered and changed her when they got to the big screen. If this was Marvel, DC took the Enchantress as she was in the comics and inserted her into Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad as she was in the comic books. So that's one thing I like better about the DCEU, and I want both universes to do well and be good. I don't like having one style. I want both. So yeah, this will be my review of the DC extended universe, and with that being said, let's get started right now. The very first film on this list was of course the 2013 Man of Steel film. Man of Steel film. This right here, in my opinion, is one of all the Superman movies. This right here, while not being the best, I still think Superman 2 is a little bit better than this film. But one thing that was better about this Superman film than all previous adaptations of Superman was that this Superman film was the best when it came to action. See, this Superman, has been controversial, but see, this Superman is based more on the New 52 Superman, which is a more darker, more aggressive Superman. He's still the same Superman Clark Kent, but he's darker, more aggressive, like Superman originally was when he was created in the 40s. They watered him down in the Silver Age, for younger viewers. But he was darker, more aggressive, killed more in the 40s when he in the 30s and 40s when he first showed up. And I like this new darker tone. This film was awesome. I love the origin of Superman. The film now is even better. I enjoy it now than I enjoyed it when it was in theaters, and I just love the fast-paced, intense action, which is something you don't get in the other Superman films. The other Superman films have action sequences, but they're dated and hokey in comparison to the badass action sequences in this film, and the entire cast did a good job. Michael Shannon wasn't that good of an actor in my opinion, but he was a great Zod, and he was much more powerful and much more intimidating than Loki in Avengers, which Avengers came out 1 year before this, yeah, this film was awesome. I'm gonna rewatch and do a longer, more in-depth review in the future. But yeah, it's not as good in my opinion as the other DCEU installments, but it was a great start and a good start to an awesome DC extended universe. I remember not caring much for this film when it came out because from the original DC cinematic universe, which I'm going to talk about later in another video, I wanted the Green Lantern 2011 film. Yeah, I enjoyed that movie. I wanted that movie to start off a DC extended universe, so that kind of made that film failing kind of made me take my anger out on this film, and I didn't appreciate what I saw when I first watched this film. I appreciate this film much more now than I did back in 2013 when it aired. Awesome film. Henry Cavill was a great Superman. I put him up there with Brandon Routh and Christopher Reeve. He's that awesome. So yeah, awesome Superman film, and an awesome start to an awesome DC extended universe. Alright, now it's time for the narration portion of this video. Let's get started right now.
Putting on a show, wanna get yourself together.
everybody? The Super Vader 400 here, Douglas Blair Roberts here, back for another video. And this time, this is part 2 in the narration version of my DC Extended Universe review. In the larger webcam portion of this video, I started off with Man of Steel. I'm going to talk about Man of Steel again, then continue on with the next 5 DCEU films. And once again, Man of Steel back in 2013 when it released, I didn't care much for it. I just wanted a Superman film to at least be decent and of course succeed with critics and make a lot of money at the box office so they could make a future Justice League movie in the future. That's what I want to see. I've already seen Superman on the big screen. And this got pushed back. The Superman movie got pushed back so long since 2006, which was the last that was the last time a Superman film was released, Superman Returns. This movie got pushed back so much I stopped caring about seeing another more action oriented Superman. I'd also wanted that 2011 Green Lantern Ryan Reynolds movie, which I'm a huge fan of. I wanted that to succeed and that to start a DC cinematic universe. But this movie right here started it, and this movie, when I saw it, it was pretty okay. Like I said, I didn't care much for it. I love this movie now, seeing what it set up and seeing how it was the start of it. What, in my opinion, is something great. Like I said in part one of my DC Cinematic Universe review. One of the things I love about the DC Extended Universe over Marvel is that while Marvel is much better, especially right now, DCEU is much more comic book like and much more closer to the comic books when it comes to depicting the power levels of these specific characters. And one thing, Marvel, they have a habit of taking stuff out of the comic book but grounding it in reality. DC doesn't do that. They take something out of the comic and insert it onto the screen as close as possible as it was in the comic book. And that's one thing I like about DC, and they don't get a lot of credit for. They often always bring up the DC Extended Universe's faults but never bring up their various pros. I'm a huge fan of both. Both give us different things and both have their flaws. Yes, the MCU has a lot of flaws despite how successful it is. But let's continue. Let's get back to Man of Steel. So yeah, the Man of Steel movie was great. This was a great modernized version of Superman. I consider it one of the best Superman movies alongside Superman 2 and Returns. And one thing I like about this film over all of the previous Superman movies is that this film had the updated fast-paced, intense action that you not only see in comic books and cartoons today, but that you see in anime. This film reminded me a lot of the popular Dragon Ball Z cartoon, which is a cartoon I used to love and watch as a child. This is the Dragon Ball Z movie. This is the Dragon Ball Z movie I wanted, and the actual Dragon Ball Z film that came out years ago, which, yes, I like that too. I'm gonna get crucified for that, but I like that movie too. That movie was more Superman, Spider-Man, and Power Rangers and Marvel than it was Dragon Ball, whereas this movie right here was more Dragon Ball than it was Superman. But they still stay true to who Superman was. If you read the new 52 Justice League comic book, which I've read the first issue of that comic book, it was uploaded to YouTube before being removed. Superman was a more aggressive and more violent character in that incarnation, and he was a more aggressive, violent character when he first showed up in the 40s. It wasn't until like the 50s, the Silver Age, where they toned down his power and watered him down personality wise for kids. So yeah, Michael Shannon, while not being as good as a lot of the MCU villains, he was a great villain. He was much more powerful and much more intimidating than the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Loki from the Avengers, who this villain gets constantly compared to. But Michael Shannon was nowhere near as good of an actor as Tom Hiddleston or any of the actors in the MCU. But he was a great villain. The another controversial thing about this film was the tearing up of Krypton. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that because if you I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that because it would lead to something. It would lead to it would set up Batman versus Superman. If he did all that and nothing came of it, no one said anything about it in the future films, then I would have a problem with him tearing up half of Earth in that movie. Then of course this is also what people don't understand. This is also, while this was for the most part true to the comics, they altered several things, such as the apps they got rid of the Fortress of Solitude, so Superman never got was able to control his powers like he did in the cartoons in the previous Superman, the Christopher Reeve trilogy. In Superman 2, Christopher Reeve, his Superman was able to fight Zod and the Phantom Zone criminals without injuring anyone in the city. Without it was able to lure them away from the city. So yeah, this was a great movie. Everyone did a good job with Henry Cavill and Lawrence Fishburne, who I loved as Perry, were the MVPs of this film. An awesome movie. I enjoy this movie much better now than I did when it was in theaters back in 2013. And 2013, like I said in my MCU review, just really wasn't a good year for movies. This just wasn't, in my opinion. So yeah, that was Man of Steel. That was the Man of Steel. The next film was Batman v Superman. Let me give my history of this film. If you're friends with me on Facebook, or yeah, YouTube, I've reviewed this film multiple times. On Facebook, if you saw my review back in 2016, you should know my opinions on the film, man. I've done multiple reviews on my YouTube channels. Well, Batman v Superman, I'm going to give my brief history again. Of course, Batman v Superman, I initially wanted to see this movie when it came out, but I was dealing with lots of personal issues, and the critical reception of this film, the negative reception of this film, turned me off to this film, and I didn't want another disappointment. The first two films I saw were December 2015 Star Wars The Force Awakens and February 2016's Deadpool. Both of these movies right here were complete and utter disappointments, man. Disappointments. And I did not want another film which was Batman v Superman, another film that I was waiting for to be another colossal disappointment. So I instead chose to skip this movie, but I really badly wanted to see this movie because I didn't like what I was hearing. I wanted to get on the computer and do one of my favorite things to do, and that is get on the computer and rant. So that's the one thing I do like about seeing bad films, bad television shows, bad wrestling, bad anything. I get to get on the internet, I get to get behind a webcam or grab a microphone and just rant for several minutes, man. I figured, okay, since this film was in theaters, there has to be a low quality version somewhere online. So I clicked the video section of Yahoo and typed in Batman v Superman. They gave me several movie links, and I clicked on the first one, which was Put Locker, and I watched this film along with Civil War and along with X-Men Apocalypse and Batman v Superman, from the opening scene with which had an epic retelling of Bruce Wayne, Batman's origin. I never get sick of seeing the origin. The origin of Bruce Wayne's parents being killed and making him the man who he was, causing him to go on a journey unlike any other superhero we've seen in comics and film. And I never ever I never ever get sick of seeing that, no matter how many times, from the opening scene to the opening scene with Superman still fighting Zod, all the way to the best scenes was the climactic final battles between Batman and Superman, Batman versus Batman the Save Martha scene, and the climactic battle between Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman versus Doomsday. Doomsday, I was hooked. Talk about going into a film with low expectations. It was so awesome. I was mad that I didn't see this. I was mad. I regretted not watching this in theaters. Going to see this movie with those said friends would have got me out of my would have got me out of my depression and rut, because this film right here was was awesome. I love the story, the cast, and the action. There were a couple of things I had problems with, such as several inconsistencies. One being Zod and Luthor's DNA making the monster Doomsday from the comic books, and yeah. So oh yes, and in the trailers, putting Doomsday in the trailers, in my opinion, that should have been a mystery. And the versions. While I would have hated to watch an almost 3 hour movie, Zack Snyder's version, his original vision, that version should have been put in theaters. This chopped up 2 hour version created lots of plot holes. There was an Ultimate Edition which received much better reviews and was so much better than the theatrical release. Cleared up a lot of plot holes and inconsistencies in this movie. In this movie right here. So yeah, and then Lex Luthor. Well, I would have much preferred um the Lex Luthor from Superman Returns and the comic books and cartoons. This Luthor, I like Jesse Eisenberg's new overly eccentric Luthor, who, when I saw him in the trailers, I actually mistook him, because of his demeanor, I mistook him for the Riddler. For the Riddler, he reminded me a lot of Jim Carrey's The Riddler. A lot of people make Joker comparisons. I see no comparisons with Joker. His plans are too complex and well thought out to be the Joker. The well thought out to be Joker. So what's his name? So yes, an awesome movie. The next movie on this list was Suicide Squad, which this movie right here is probably the best of the DCEU, in my opinion. This was the worst reviewed. This was the worst reviewed movie by critics. This wasn't well received. However, the cast, especially Will Smith and Margaret Robbie's portrayal, were praised. Were praised in this movie. I went into this movie with extremely low expectations because I didn't understand how Batman v Superman, the death of Superman, I did not see how that would lead up into Suicide Squad. But from the opening scene, which had Amanda Waller, and the badass video game style introduction of Deadshot and all of the characters in the film, to the climactic final battle with Deadshot in the gang versus Enchantress, I was hooked. And this movie right here was the most fun DCEU movie. This movie was more fun and more heroic than both BVS and of course Justice League. And this movie featured a team of This movie featured a team of superheroes. So yeah, one thing I love about this film for the most part, while changing only a couple of things, this film was spot on with the comic books, with its comic books. It was spot on with the comic books. Um, while they're in the comics, there are various members of the Suicide Squad. The two most constant members are Deadshot and of course Captain Boomerang. Captain Boomerang. All the characters and cast were cool, with Will Smith, Deadshot's character, in my opinion, being the MVP of the film and being the best character in the movie. He was so awesome. His performance was well received, and they're developing a Deadshot movie alongside the sequel, which will focus on one of the other cool characters in the film, Katana. So yeah. And speaking of cast members, Joel Kinnaman, who was RoboCop, who was RoboCop in the 2014 reboot, he was so much better here. I loved him in RoboCop, but he was just a generic action hero in that film. He was so much better here. The character Enchantress, who, in my opinion, she should have been in Justice League Dark. That's the movie you should have made. That's the movie you should have made instead of this right here. But she was spot on with her comic book counterpart. They criticized her, but that's how Enchantress was in the comic books. One thing I love about, like I said, love about DCEU, they took everything as it was in the comic books and inserted it on to the screen. This was like an old school campy comic book film, despite having multiple villains. This movie was also hated because a lot of people expected him to do an adaptation of this video game, of this animated movie that airs in between the Batman Arkham Asylum video game series called Assault on Arkham. Assault on Arkham. I've never seen that film, but they wanted that. That film has Joker as the main antagonist, who a lot of people predicted that Joker was going to be the main antagonist in the film. I thought Joker was going to be a protagonist in this movie because back in the late 80s, early 90s, they wanted to do a Joker film, but that wasn't popular, so Tim Burton did a Batman film instead. Nowadays, you can do a Joker film. You can have Joker as a hero. I thought Joker was going to be a hero. Instead, they had him as a he was barely in the film, which I didn't mind because it wasn't about Joker. It wasn't about Joker, but that pissed off a lot of people. That pissed off a lot of people. When Jared Leto did a great job as the Joker. He was more like the comic book version of Joker. You really can't compare any of these Jokers. That's Nicholson, Ledger, and Romero, the guy from the '60s Batman series. You can't compare any of these Jokers. They're all different eras and different time periods. But great movie, way better than what critics gave it out to be. In the Ultimate Edition, the Ultimate Edition was even better. But this, in my opinion, didn't need an Ultimate Edition. Either version was good, but the Ultimate version was even better. An awesome film, and I loved how it continued from BVS and once again set up Justice League. The next film on this list is Wonder Woman, the most popular and best reviewed film in the DCEU. Nothing prior to this movie, nothing was going the DCEU's way. Nothing was going their way. But I like how this film finally, DC finally caught a break. Wonder Woman broke so many. Wonder Woman not only did it top the box office, becoming one of the highest grossing films of 2017, and put DCEU in the right direction. They finally got a film right in Wonder Woman. They finally got a film right in Wonder Woman. I like how this film broke so many records, and this film is something Marvel hasn't done, and actually they're going to be doing it next year, but up until next year had not done, and that was have a film with a major female protagonist in the lead. That's something Marvel can't claim. They're going to do it next year with Captain Marvel Captain Marvel and her appearance in the fourth Avenger movies. But prior to that, they never did that. They never did that. And this film was spot on. The comics looks just like the New 52, and the whole story. I felt like I was watching the entire comic book come to life. Only problem I would have with the film, I don't care much about it now, was that the villain Xerxes, I felt he should have been saved for another villain. It should have had ended with Wonder Woman failing and her finishing off Xerxes here, but she finished off Xerxes here in a climactic battle. I love that plot twist. All the entire villain, the entire film, you thought that villain, the guy from the villain the guy who portrayed Stryker from Wolverine Origins, you thought him and that woman were the villains, but then it was that old man who had actually appeared as as an ally. I don't remember his name at the moment, but yeah, Wonder Woman, one of the greatest films. One of the greatest films I've saw now. I was finally happy that something finally went decent. They finally did something right. Something good finally happened to them. They ended their horrible track record of poorly or ill-received movies. They finally did something right. And Gal Gadot did a great job as Wonder Woman. When I think when I see Gal Gadot, I don't see Gal Gadot. I actually see Wonder Woman. She did a great job in this movie. And see, with this film right here, everything looked to be good. Everything looked to be good. Justice League, the trailers, the trailers, the TV spots, all of that stuff looked good. Then I finally saw the movie. I already mentioned in my Justice League review and various other videos that I didn't see Justice League when it was released. Having problems. I was having lots of personal issues, and the guy I wanted to see it with, we're no longer friends. So yeah, I didn't see Justice League when it released. I saw a terrible leaked version. I saw a terrible leaked version, and I was disappointed. The film looked and felt great. The film was actually good, but it was so bland and forgettable. And see, I had high expectations, and the film did not live up to them. I wanted Justice League to be the biggest film of the year. I wanted it to be the biggest movie of the year, and it wasn't. It was mixed. It didn't even break the 700 million mark. Like I said, while the film looked good, the story, action, everything was good. The problem I had with the film was the villain Steppenwolf. He was awesome, but the problem I had with him was his motivation and plan. His plan was thousands of years ago. He was driven away. He was driven away by Hercules, Xerxes, several Green Lanterns, humans in the Amazon, several of those characters working together, and thousands of years, 2,000 years later, he comes back to escape the servitude of his nephew or uncle, one of those dark side. He invades Earth again, and he's summoned back to Earth due to the smell of fear, due to the sensing of fear from the Earth, having lost Superman. Here's the problem I have with his plan. He waited 2,000 years to enact this plan. He waited till Earth was once again fully populated with heroes, one of which was Superman, who was way stronger than all of those Amazons, Lanterns, and Hercules and Xerxes, who he fought years ago. What kept him from entering Earth 2,000 years ago? See, in the comic books, this is where this film, while close to the comic books, deviated from the comic books. Steppenwolf was Darkseid's lieutenant in the comic books. That's all he was. He was. They tried to make it more complex than it really was. Really was. That's the problem I had with Steppenwolf's plan. That's the problem I had with Steppenwolf's plan. This was also Thanos had a similar goal. Hit similar goal. He waited until Earth was fully populated with heroes to finally decide to enact this plan to wipe out half of humanity. But Avengers and MCU they got away with it. The Justice League movie did not. But yeah, the story, action, everything was great. Cyborg, Flash, Steppenwolf, and Superman, in my opinion, were the coolest in this movie. Another thing I love about this film that I didn't mention in my Justice League film, they recognized that Wonder Woman. They recognized that Wonder Woman, her film was the most popular, so they gave you lots of Wonder Woman badassery scenes. They had lots of one. She had some of the best scenes in the film, and she was fighting way better than all of the other other people in the film, like Aquaman, Flash, and of course Cyborg, who I expected him to do much more than he expected him to do action-wise, do much more than he did, do much more than he did. So yeah. Only other problems I had with this movie. This movie is much better on DVD and Blu-ray than it was when it was in theater, because this is still what I've been waiting my whole life for. Only other problem I have with this film is that this film did not feel like a complete Justice League movie. The Justice League in this film felt small and incomplete in comparison to the monster league you see in the comics and cartoons. In the comics and cartoons, the Arrowverse on television, that Justice League felt more bigger and more legit than this Justice League right here. This was one problem I saw actually back in 2014 when the DCEU was still being planned. I was disappointed to hear that Robin, Cyborg, no, Robin, Martian Manhunter, and Green Lantern would not immediately part of the and would not be immediately part of the original roster, and that right there, in my opinion, kind of killed this film. Cyborg was awesome in this film, but you could have put him. You could have had his spot should have been Martian Manhunters, and and um and see, they did this because this Justice League movie was also loosely based on, of course, the New 52 and also some Injustice, the video game series and comic book in here. And the Martian Manhunter wasn't immediately a part of that Justice League roster, so that's why he was in this film. And of course, they didn't have Green Lantern because of the negative reception and box office bomb that was the 2011 film, um which I liked, but this was a reboot. That film in 2011. That has nothing to do with the DCEU now. And as for Martian Manhunter, that was good in the New 52 comic books. That was a comic book, not in the film. You need to have every recognizable character here. And like I said, this Justice League felt incomplete. And this then, like I said, the biggest sin of all is that once you get done with this film, you'll forget all about it, despite how awesome it is. It's awesome, but it's like there. The death of Superman, the Superman's resurrection, that wasn't as good as I thought it would be. The prediction I had was way better than what they had in the film. So yeah, that was Justice League film, but I enjoy this movie much more. I enjoy this movie much more now than I did when it was out, and I'm looking forward to the future of the DCU. Later this year, Aquaman is December of this year. I hope that is good. Hope that is good. Hope that is good. Jason Momoa, he was pretty good in this film. However, I didn't like his portrayal. I didn't like his portrayal of Aquaman in this movie. I hope he's much better in his own solo movie. They try to make Aquaman like Thor, Rob Zombie, and the professional wrestler Roman Reigns, whom I don't like. So yeah, that was Aquaman. He was also doing other stuff like littering in the ocean, littering in the ocean and stuff. And yeah, um, Ezra Miller's Flash. Um, he annoyed me the first time I saw it. Now, he garnered the most praise from the critical reception. I loved Urza. I like his portrayal of Flash. Now, the only thing I don't like about this film, his portrayal in this film, they made him such a wussy. Wussy, having him not wanting to fight, just wanting to move in and kill people. But they wanted to be more realistic, probably. And I love Superman. Finally, the Superman, the Silver Age Superman was here. The making jokes, the quips, and everything. Yeah, and I love the fight with him and Steppenwolf was awesome. Everyone hated how Superman just one shot at Steppenwolf. He can do that. He's that powerful. Steppenwolf, he's a threat to everyone else, but not Superman, the Man of Steel. That's why they resurrected him. He shouldn't be a match for Superman. Superman's the Man of Steel. No one is a match for him except Doomsday. But yeah, an awesome film. Also love the post-credit scene which shows Lex Luthor and Deathstroke talk about forming the Legion of Doom or the Justice Society of Evil. Justice Society of Evil, a much better Justice League movie in the future. Then see the Justice League movie has been put on hold to accommodate a standalone Batman film with Deathstroke as the main antagonist, which I'm looking forward to. And another of course Flash film with Captain Boomerang. After seeing what his role in Suicide Squad was, I want to see what his role in the next Flash movie, the Flashpoint. They claim it's also going to be Flashpoint, which I'm looking forward to. Then of course they're talking about a Man of Steel 2 sequel, and they put the Justice League movie on hold to focus on the Batman film. And the Justice League movie, before I talk about that, then of course I'm also looking forward to the 2020 Green Lantern film. I was so mad that the 2011 film bombed and didn't have a sequel, but we're getting a better one now with both Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. Instead of starting Green Lantern off with Hal Jordan like it started, have both Green Lanterns in there, and maybe in the future, if it succeeds, you can introduce other Green Lanterns like Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner, the teenage Green Lantern, Abin Sur, and everyone else. So I'm really interested in that. And then after that, you will have a more complete Justice League with Green Lantern being part of that team. With Green Lantern being part of that team, because having him and Martian Manhunter and Robin being absent from this team just made this Justice League feel incomplete, man. Just made the Justice League feel incomplete. So yeah. Yeah, that was the DC EU. That was the DCEU. That was the DCEU. They have various unassigned projects like Justice League Dark, a film featuring the character Lobo, and so much more. And I'll talk more about that when all that stuff is announced. But yeah, like I said, I like both Marvel and DC, and I want both universes to do good. Well, like I said, this was my review. This was my review of the DC EU. Gonna also do longer, in-depth reviews of each of these movies separately. Again, because I love doing multiple reviews, multiple videos, and love talking about these movies. And these long list type videos you see right here are my best and most popular type of videos. So with that being said, I'm done for now. I'll see you guys later.